The wind howled across the ridge like a living thing, tearing at Arya Calloway's hood and rattling the thin metal of her rifle. Before we dive into the heart of this frozen battle, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an epic story like this. Also, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching this video from? Now, let's head back to the Arctic dark. Frost crept along her gloves, numbing her fingers, while her radio hissed with broken static that came and went like a dying breath. She was alone up here. No voices, no reassurance, just the Arctic dark and the weight of 8 lives moving below her. Hours earlier, it had been different. Warmer, louder. Someone had laughed when she walked into the briefing room. Not cruel, worse than that. Casually. "Who's the kid?" a voice had muttered. Another had leaned back in his chair and said, "She's our Overwatch." Captain Ronan Hale hadn't even looked up from the map. Just a short nod, no words, no welcome. Now, none of that mattered. The valley below her pulsed with shadowed movement, wrong in its rhythm, too organized to be random. Her breath fogged inside her mask as she pressed her eye to the scope, heart steady, hands calm. Then, through the screaming wind and the dead radio, one shot split the night, and everything changed. Arya Calloway had arrived at Forward Outpost Kestrel just before dawn. When the sky was still undecided between night and morning, the wind pushed against her like it wanted her gone, biting through layers of cold weather gear and sneaking into every seam. She stepped off the transport without ceremony, her rucksack perfectly centered on her back, her rifle case balanced in one gloved hand. She was smaller than most of the others, not fragile, just compact, tightly put together, like something designed for precision rather than presence. Her dark hair was pulled into a regulation bun beneath her hood, not a strand out of place. Her face was young, but not soft. There was a stillness in her eyes that didn't ask to be noticed. No one greeted her. A few soldiers glanced up as she passed, their gazes sliding over her and away again. Not hostile, not curious, just dismissive. She caught fragments of voices as she moved down the narrow corridor toward the armory. "That's her. Looks like she got lost. Overwatch." None of them said it to her face. They didn't need to. Arya found her assigned bunk, stowed her gear with practiced efficiency, and went straight to the armory. She moved quietly, not out of fear, but out of habit. Every motion had a reason. Every step was deliberate. She began laying out her equipment on the metal table, piece by piece, like a ritual. Rifle, optic, bipod, databook, kestrel, range cards. Each item was cleaned, checked, and aligned with precise spacing. She worked in silence, her gloved fingers steady despite the cold. "Cold like this kills faster than bullets." The voice came from behind her. She didn't jump. Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer stood a few feet back, arms crossed, eyes sharp and unsmiling. He was the kind of man whose reputation arrived before he did. Senior sniper, the standard, the one people whispered about when they thought they were alone. Arya turned slowly to face him. "Yes, Sergeant." He stepped closer, eyes dropping to her setup. He didn't touch anything, just observed. "What's your cold bore shift at -30, he asked. "0.3 mils high, 0.1 left, she replied instantly. He raised an eyebrow. "And density altitude?" "Compensated in my dope card." "And your trigger freeze protocol?" "I don't let it," she said. I breathed through it. For the first time, Mercer studied her face. Not her rank, not her size, her eyes. "First real deployment?" he asked. "Yes, Sergeant." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "If you lock up out there, people die." "I know. Not if. When." "I know," she repeated. He nodded once, then turned and walked away without another word. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't dismissal either. The briefing room was crowded when Arya entered. Voices echoed against metal walls. Coffee steamed. Maps glowed on screens. She took a seat near the back, hands folded in her lap. Captain Ronan Hale stood at the front, pointing at terrain overlays. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that filled space without effort. "This valley is the choke point," he said. "Our target is here. We go in quiet, fast, and we don't linger." Lieutenant Noah, reading, cleared his throat. Overwatch is one shooter. Hale nodded. Reading frowned. That ridge is brutal. Whether alone, she'll handle it, Hale said. Reading glanced at Arya for the first time. Really looked. His hesitation wasn't cruel. It was cautious, protective. With respect, sir, he said. She's new. Hale's jaw tightened. He looked back at the map. This isn't a training run. There will be no babysitting. His words weren't directed at her, but they landed on her all the same. Arya didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't defend herself. She didn't need to. Later, alone in her bunk, she removed her gloves and rubbed warmth back into her hands. From a small inner pocket of her jacket, she pulled out 2 worn dog tags. Her father's. She held them in her palm, feeling their familiar weight. He had taught her to shoot when she was barely tall enough to rest the rifle on a bench. He never praised her, never raised his voice. He corrected her breathing, her posture, her patience. Don't chase the shot, he used to say. Let it come to you. He died when she was 16. After that, she trained harder than anyone else, not to prove anything, but to be worthy. She hadn't chosen this path because it was heroic. She had chosen it because it was honest, because here, competence mattered more than charisma, because responsibility meant something out there. People lived or died based on whether you did your job. That made sense to her. That night, as she zipped up her cold weather layers and checked her rifle one last time, she felt the weight of what was coming. Not fear, but awareness. She was ready, even if no one else believed it yet. The helicopter cut through the night like a blade, its rotors chewing at the wind, scattering snow in violent spirals that vanished as quickly as they formed. Arya sat near the open door, knees braced, gloved hands resting lightly on her rifle case. The red interior light painted every face in muted shadows. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Captain Hale stood, clipped into the overhead line, scanning the dark valley below. Lieutenant Reading checked his tablet, the glow reflecting in his eyes. Staff Sergeant Mercer sat across from Arya, arms folded, gaze unreadable. When the ramp dropped, the cold rushed in like a living thing. They moved fast, disciplined, silent. Boots met snow. Shapes scattered into the dark. Arya peeled off immediately, heading uphill. Her steps were careful, calculated. The ridge rose ahead of her like a frozen spine, jagged and unforgiving. The climb was steep, and the wind pushed hard enough to knock balance from a careless foot. She didn't rush. She counted her breaths, measured her footing, and let her muscles settle into a rhythm. By the time she reached her position, the rest of team had already begun moving into the valley. She set up without hesitation. Bipod anchored, optic cleared, data card taped to her forearm. She settled behind the scope and let the world narrow. Below her, the valley unfolded in gray and shadow. Rock outcroppings, ice-choked streams, sparse clusters of low structures, clinging to the terrain like afterthoughts. At first, it looked quiet. Then she saw the first movement. Not fast, not sloppy, deliberate. A group of figures shifted behind a ridgeline, spacing exact. Another appeared near a rock shelf, matching pace. They weren't wandering, they were positioning. Arya zoomed in, heart steady. Then she saw more. Too many. Her fingers hovered over the radio. Overwatch to ground. I'm seeing multiple heat signatures. Patterned movement. Spacing suggests trained elements. Static answered first, then Hale's voice. Define patterned. Not random patrols, she said. They're setting lanes overlapping fields. There was a pause. How certain are you? Reading asked. Arya watched a figure signal with 2 fingers, then disappear behind a boulder. I'm certain. Mercer's voice cut in. Describe formation. She did, quietly, precisely. Another pause. Hale exhaled slowly. We don't have satellite confirmation. I know. A crackle passed through the radio, then a tone. Solar interference spiking, Reading said. We're losing clarity. The sky above Arya shifted faintly, like something unseen was bending. She kept watching. Another group emerged, moving in synchronized arcs. They're not reacting, she said. They're waiting. Waiting for you. Hale's jaw tightened. Command, advise, he said. Static answered. Reading tapped his screen. Signal degradation is accelerating. Arya's stomach tightened. This was the moment. Abort or proceed. They've built a net, she said. If we move straight in, they'll close it. Another pause. Wind screamed over her position, shaking her scope just enough that she had to compensate. Hale made his decision. We adjust route, he said. Slower approach. Arya, you guide us. Her throat tightened. Understood. The radio crackled again, then silence stretched longer than it should have. Arya adjusted her optic, scanning, counting. Then the radio hissed. Then it went dead. She stared at it, tapped it. Nothing. She checked her secondary. Nothing. Her breath fogged harder inside her mask. Overwatch report. Hale's voice tried to break through, then vanished. Arya swallowed. Below her, the team moved, unaware, still walking into the net. Her fingers tightened around the rifle. The enemy movement intensified. They were converging, closing lanes, cutting off escape. This wasn't coincidence. It was preparation. Arya scanned faster now, tracking every shadow, every heat signature, building a living map in her mind. She spotted the command element. He stood slightly apart, issuing signals, coordinating. She measured the distance. It was extreme, well beyond comfortable. Wind gusted sideways, then calmed, then surged again. No spotter, no confirmation, no backup, just her and 8 lives below. Her heart didn't race, it slowed. Every sound sharpened. Her father's voice echoed in memory. Don't chase the shot. Let it come to you. She waited. Wind shifted. She adjusted. Waited. The commander turned. She exhaled and pulled the trigger. The recoil was gentle. The silence afterward was not. The figure dropped. Everything broke. Shouting, scattering, confusion. They didn't know where it came from. Arya didn't wait. She adjusted and fired again. Then again. She removed leadership, weapon carriers, and coordinators below. The ambush collapsed into chaos. Her radio crackled weakly, then died again. They were alive. She knew that much. But now the enemy was searching for her, and the wind screamed louder. Arya did not move after the last echo of gunfire faded. She stayed exactly where she was, cheek pressed lightly into the stock, eyes steady, behind the scope, breathing slow and deliberate. The cold gnawed at her fingers, but she didn't flex them. Any unnecessary movement would cost heat. Any wasted motion would cost focus. She reached for her data book, flipping it open with one thumb. Wind shifting from northwest to cross slope. Velocity inconsistent, pulsing. Temperature drop accelerating. She logged everything, not because she had time, but because she always did. Her pencil scratched quietly, each line precise. Below her, the valley was no longer quiet. Heat signatures scattered. Shapes broke formation. Arya noticed something else. They weren't retreating. They were searching. She adjusted her magnification by instinct, fingers moving without conscious thought. She tracked small changes, a head tilt, a pause that lasted half a second longer than it should, a hand gesture that wasn't panic, but communication. They were trying to find the shooter. Her. She slid her focus across the terrain, mapping lines of sight. She could tell which shapes were natural and which were wrong. The mountain spoke in patterns, and she had learned its language. Her father had taken her out into snowstorms when she was still young. He had made her sit and watch how drifts formed behind trees, how wind bent tall grass, how sound traveled differently through cold air. Coal hides mistakes, he told her, but it always reveals discipline. Down below, 2 figures broke off from the main group and moved uphill. They were sweeping. Her gaze followed them. She checked her wine flag, a thin strip of fabric she'd placed earlier. It fluttered, then stilled. She noted the pattern and waited. Then she made a tiny adjustment to her dope. Not because she was going to fire, but because she might. Her radio crackled faintly, not words, just interference. She didn't answer. Her breathing slowed even more. The cold burned her lungs now, but she didn't cough. She saw a faint flicker behind a rock shelf. Not heat, reflection. Metal. She zoomed slightly. A weapon barrel. She noted the angle, calculated, and stored it. She didn't fire. Not yet. Mystery kept people cautious. Certainty made them reckless. Leadership always revealed itself. She had just proven that. Now she needed to survive it. Her fingers tingled painfully. She rolled her shoulders one at a time, slow and controlled. Down below, the chaos intensified. Some were yelling. Others were trying to restore order. Arya felt her heart beating, but it wasn't fast. It was deliberate. But she was not unprepared. She had seen this before in fragments, in drills, in frozen mornings when others quit early. She wasn't a mystery to herself. She was just invisible to everyone else for now. And that, she realized, might be the only advantage she had left. The radio died again without warning. Not a crackle, just silence. Arya tapped the unit, checked the cable, and the backup. Nothing. The mountain swallowed her signal. Her eyes lifted immediately to the valley. The team was still moving. 8 dark shapes cutting through the snow, unaware that the net was closing again. Her chest tightened. She raised the radio once more. "Ground, this is Overwatch. Do you copy?" Silence. Panic would waste time. She tracked the team through her scope, watching as one of them paused briefly, then resumed. Her gaze shifted wider. Then she saw him. He stood on an elevated shelf, giving subtle signals, a finger, a nod. Everything responded to him. This was the true command element. Her breathing slowed. The distance was extreme. Wind cut across the slope, shoving at her rifle, howling loud enough to blur sound. Just her and 8 people who trusted a voice they could no longer hear. Her heart steadied. She pressed her cheek harder into the stock, letting the rifle become part of her. She pulled her data card closer. Angle, density, temperature, spin, drift, wind. She watched the flag. One flicked, another stilled, then reversed. She closed her eyes for half a second and listened. Her father's voice surfaced again. "Don't chase the shot. Let it come to you." She waited. The commander lifted his hand. She adjusted. Waited. Wind surged. She held. Waited. Then, for a breath, everything settled. She exhaled and squeezed. The recoil was gentle. The figure dropped. Everything exploded into confusion. Shouts, scattering movement. Signals that no longer meant anything. They didn't know where it came from. Arya didn't wait. She was already adjusting. Another leader stepped forward. She measured, waited, and fired. That one fell, too. Below, formations began to fracture. Someone fired blindly into the dark. Arya didn't flinch. She worked. She tracked heavy weapon carriers and coordinators. Every trigger pull was calculated. Below, the ambush collapsed into noise. They weren't hunting anymore. They were surviving. She allowed herself one glance at the team. They had stopped moving and were scanning, confused, but alive. Her radio crackled weakly, then died. She exhaled slowly. They would make it now. She had changed the board, but the mountain was not finished. The enemy movement shifted, purposeful. They were spreading toward her. Her pulse ticked up. She saw 3 heat signatures climbing the slope in wide arcs, disciplined hunters. They knew there was a shooter now. Arya checked her ammo. Not enough for a long fight. She didn't move. Movement would betray her. She lowered her magnification, tracking multiple elements at once. Her fingers were burning now. Below, the team had started moving again, faster now, using the chaos she had created. Her job wasn't done. One of the climbing figures paused and looked up. She froze. She let the mountain hide her. She didn't breathe. Seconds passed. Then the figure turned away. She exhaled slowly. Her shoulders ached. Her calves burned. She watched as more shapes peeled off from the valley floor. They weren't confused anymore. They were organized, and their objective was her. Arya checked her escape routes. Neither was good. Her radio remained silent. For the first time, the weight of what she had done pressed against her. Not pride, but responsibility. Calm beats fear, her father had said. She watched the nearest hunter move closer. She adjusted her position by a fraction, careful not to break her outline. She wasn't done yet. She fired once more, targeting a heavy weapon carrier near the team's escape route. The figure fell. The helicopter would have a safer approach now. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lowered the rifle. The mountain was winning. Her radio sparked just for a moment, then nothing. She had done what she could. Now she had to live through it. The hunters were closer. She could hear boots on ice. She pulled her rifle in close. She would not fire unless she had to. Mystery was still her best weapon. She had become something they didn't understand, and that made them cautious. She allowed herself one last look at the valley. The team was moving fast. They would make it. She pressed her forehead briefly against the stock, then shifted slowly, silently, becoming shadow. She was just a young soldier in the dark, hunted, exhausted, and still doing her job. The helicopter came in low, its lights muted, rotors beating the cold air. Snow whipped across the plateau as it settled, and the team poured aboard. Arya was the last to climb in. Hands reached for her, pulling her up. Inside, no one spoke at first. Breath steamed. Captain Hale finally turned. He looked at Arya with recognition. "You broke the ambush," he said. Arya nodded once. Staff Sergeant Mercer had not taken his eyes off her. He didn't test her. He simply watched as if recalibrating his world. No one congratulated her. The silence felt heavier than noise ever could. Later in the command tent, Colonel Evelyn Graves stood with her hands behind her back, eyes fixed on a playback of Arya's shot data. "You didn't guess," she said. "No, ma'am." "You didn't rush." "No, ma'am." The colonel nodded. Every unit develops legends. Most are exaggerated. A few are necessary. What you did tonight was discipline under conditions that erase most people. You will be known as White Ghost. The room stayed quiet. Hale lowered his head slightly. Mercer exhaled slowly. Arya stood still. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. She wasn't a rookie anymore, not because of a title, but because no one would ever look at her the same way again. Respect had found her, not through volume, but through what she had done when no one was watching. As the debrief ended, Arya walked back to her bunk. She sat down and felt the dog tags one last time before tucking them away. She had carried the weight of 8 lives, and in the silence of the Arctic night, she had found her own. She was no longer the kid or a lost Overwatch. She was the anchor. And as sleep finally began to pull at her exhausted limbs, she knew that for the first time since her father died, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. If you enjoyed the story of the White Ghost, don't forget to subscribe for more intense military and survival tales. We appreciate your support. Would you like me to continue the story with Arya's next deployment?